Yay. Okay. Hello. Thank you for joining us for the DIS Semester in Scandinavia information session as part of our study abroad advising for winter 2025. My name is Callie Rouse. I am a senior intercultural programs advisor at CGIS, and I work specifically with our DIS program, and I use she, her pronouns.
Thanks, Callie. My name is Will. I work with DIS abroad. I'm on our outreach team here. I'm also a University of Michigan graduate, so always happy to be back in Ann Arbor and working with Callie. And I'm also a DIS alum, so if you're ever wondering about being a UMich graduate and a DIS alum, I'm happy to chat with you about that. Yeah, excited for our little info session today.
Awesome. Okay, so overview. So we are going to be talking first of all about the basics of the program and then diving into courses, housing, Stockholm versus Copenhagen as locations to go, the application process, and finally some additional notes that can be helpful in preparation of going abroad. So the basics. So this program is unique in that it is located in two different locations. You can either spend the semester in Copenhagen, Denmark, or you can spend it in Stockholm, Sweden. So we work with DIS for this program. And they have a portal where you'll apply with them as well as applying with us. We have a full program FAQ on this program, in addition to, of course, this recording that we'll share with you after, where you can look through how to get ready for the program. The basics and the academics is that students can take between 12 to 15 credits on the program and also choose one core class, which we'll talk about what that actually is, from multiple tracks available. You also will choose from a variety of electives, and we have a linked, both the Sweden and Denmark course guides. And finally, there are 3 different housing types, which we'll get into in more detail. And with the application deadline, this is a unique program. It has an early application deadline. So the priority deadline that we recommend students apply to is 8/1, and then the secondary deadline is 9/1. So courses, getting into the core and elective courses. So students will select one core course at application. So these are unique courses in that you have a travel component with this core course. So the cores actually travel twice during the term. So once you'll go to spend a week-long period with your core course, discovering your topic in more depth in a different country in Europe. And then once more, you will have a core course week where you're going to be in like Denmark or Sweden, in the neighboring area, where you're going to also focus more in depth on that particular course. And you don't have to be doing this in your major field. So if you're like, oh, this sounds really cool to me, but like this isn't my major, that's okay. You can still apply for a core course regardless. And do note that if you're interested in some lab courses, you may have to have a matching core course to go with certain labs. So be mindful of that also when you're thinking about what do I choose as my core. This is a really important course that you'll actually decide when you apply, and it will be what you get kind of admitted into as a student on the program. And then after admittance, you will then select 3 to 4 additional courses as your electives after admittance. And again, these don't have to be related to your core. So if you did, entrepreneurship or something like that for your core, they can be all across the range. And we have those course listings available for you to look through. Yeah. Housing. So we have Homestay, LLC, or the Collegium and Student Boende, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, options available to you. So
awesome. So as Callie said, we've got 3 different housing options available to you. Homestay is just what you think it is. You'd be living with a host or host family. We have a ton of different types of hosts. Most of our hosts have been with us for years. And this is hands down the most culturally integrative housing option. And as Callie writes, the best way to integrate into local life. So absolutely. And at the end of the semester, when students take a housing survey, Homestays is consistently rated as that #1 highest rated housing option. So always nice to mention and have on your radar. Also, it is the least expensive food wise, as also on this slide. As you do have hosts making your meals, most of the time, you know, you're getting that Danish cooking, maybe also partaking in making some family recipes. And whereas those other two, living and learning and Collegium or student bone day, you would be cooking your meals and buying groceries for yourself throughout your time abroad. Lastly, I do want to mention with the homestay, if this is something that's interesting to you, but you also are really valuing your independence and want that more student-based housing option, we do offer visiting homestays. And do note though, that we do have limited spots, and that's an option to live in apartment-like housing, either the living and learning community, Collegium, or student bone day, but also be assigned a local host or homestay that you would occasionally meet up with, go on dinners with, or do activities that you enjoy together. So that's another option if you want a homestay, but also want to live in an apartment. Secondly, we've got living and learning communities. And then we also have Collegium and student bone day. Those are all apartment-like dorm style housing. And you would share a roommate or two, DIS student as your roommate for all of those options. Living and learning community, as I mentioned, apartment-like style housing, but those are all themed living arrangements. So those are all DIS students with shared passions that bring those students together. So some examples are meet the city, culinary, and outdoors. And something that's unique to these living and learning communities is that you'd be committing to weekly, bi-weekly meetings and activities related to that theme. So outdoor living and learning community goes rock climbing, hiking, canoeing, and they've got a community advisor that meets with them at the beginning of the semester, chats with them about particular times that they want to go and possible outings so that they are all on the same page in terms of what the semester ahead looks like with their housing site. And then finally, Collegium's Student Bone Day, two different names for one housing site. Collegium is the Danish name, and then Student Bone Day is the Swedish name, but it's essentially the same exact thing. Again, that's an apartment-like dorm style housing. You would have a DIS roommate or two as your roommate, but also in that housing site in the Collegium or Student Bone Day, you would have local or international students on those floors or suites. So those are students in their 20s. They've been interviewed by DIS staff, and they're wanting to get to know DIS students and intermingle with our students. So that's another great option if you're really looking for a mixture of maybe what you have in the US, but also want to get some of that local student life and you know, hear about the cafes that locals are interested in, whatnot. As it says on the slide, something to note is that the housing style itself, what the dorms will physically look like, is extremely varied dependent on which building apartment that you're placed in. There are singles, doubles, triples. Most students have a roommate or two, as I mentioned. We do have some singles, but we can only guarantee those for students with medical or religious accommodations. So certainly reach out if you have those or if you want to hear more about that. Another thing I want to mention is that all students, regardless of whichever housing type that you're interested in, all students commute an average of about 25 to 35 minutes one way to DIS facilities. So you're commuting just like the locals do. And there's many ways to do this: metro, bus, take a bike. Many students rent a bike. And while we do have some housing sites that are closer to that 10-15 minute commute time, majority of students commute about 25 to 35 minutes. In general, homestays and living learning communities do tend to be on the farther average of that, closer to that 35-45 minutes. But commuting in Scandinavia and in Copenhagen is fast, it's easy. We give you a commuter card, and most importantly, it's safe. So if you have any questions about commuting or anything about housing, please don't hesitate to reach out.
So then what do we think about when you're kind of like dividing or like looking between the two locations? Which city is going to suit you better? So here's a little bit more information about the cities themselves.
All right, so Stockholm. I actually studied in Stockholm myself, and uh, the classrooms and center building is in the Royal College of Music in this like city center of Stockholm. The Royal College of Music is one of the most prestigious music colleges in Sweden, I believe the oldest in Sweden. It's a beautiful building with giant floor to ceiling windows, and we have smaller class sizes than in DIS Copenhagen. So certainly still intimate feel in terms of class sizes in Copenhagen, but if you really want that smaller feel, Stockholm might be a better fit. Stockholm itself is a really spread out city, but the metro system is super easy to use. It's all in one region, whereas Copenhagen is a bit more sectioned off. So you would have to really look at where you're going when you're in Copenhagen, make sure you're buying the right ticket. Stockholm is a lot more accessible in terms of using the metro and just getting around. It's a city surrounded by nature and water. Locals are obsessed with nature and get out whenever they can, even when it's cold and Americans are inside shivering under their covers. And also, one of my favorite facts about Stockholm is that there's about 30,000 islands around Stockholm. So it's right in the archipelago. You can hop on a ferry with your Metro card that DIS gives you and kind of just tour around the water and go explore the island. So that's something really neat. Lastly, fika. Fika is super important in Stockholm and I believe required by law in some buildings or corporations. And fika breaks, that's basically like taking a coffee or a pastry, coffee and pastry break, maybe by yourself or with a colleague or with some people that you love, and intentionally taking a break from work, sitting down, enjoying a nice treat, maybe indulging in some nice conversation. So that's fika, and Swedes really value that. Jumping over Copenhagen, whereas Stockholm is really one central building. Copenhagen, our DIS facilities are spread out across multiple buildings in the heart of the city, along that cobblestone. They're definitely walkable. We allow a 15-minute passing period, but you won't need more than 15 minutes to get between those classes. As I mentioned, larger class sizes, still a lot smaller compared to U of M students, especially if you have a lot of bigger lectures. These are very small classes compared to that. We kept those classes about, I want to say 26, 27 students. Copenhagen is a bit more walkable than Stockholm. And as I mentioned, zone-based transit system. So you'll still be able to get around. Metros come every 5 minutes, very Scandinavian transportation, very similar in that way. But in terms of walking and getting places by foot, Copenhagen is definitely a bit more walkable. And then lastly, of course, the amusement park in Central Station, just a short walk from DIS. There's also an amusement park in Stockholm. Happy to chat about that. It's about 20 minutes from DIS. So you've got both of those if you're a big adrenaline junkie, no worries there, but it's a bit more central in Copenhagen.
Awesome. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the pictures from the locations?
For sure. Yeah, so this is DIS Stockholm, a few photos of some common spaces of the academic building and in a classroom and hallways. As I mentioned, you've got those floor to ceiling windows in the Royal College of Music. The picture on the left is a photo of the main floor. There's also a cafe in there for the students, DIS students, as well as students at the Royal College of Music. So you can pop by. It's called Octave, grab a quick coffee or maybe a lunch if you want before class. In each of the buildings, we've got a student hub that's not shown in one of these photos, but know that in both DIS Stockholm and Copenhagen, right in your academic building, you can stop by as long as there's a DIS staff there and you go during the hours that we're open, chat about your questions, ask how to rent a bike. all of that stuff. But yeah, Stockholm is beautiful. We've got these gorgeous colors and artwork and vending machines and everything you need. And this is Copenhagen. Again, that's common spaces. There's a photo of a classroom on the left there. That middle photo is just one photo of the student hub. Actually, all three of those photos are student hub photos. But again, nice place to study, grab a book, chat with some DIS staff, use the printers. We've got a lot of resources at your disposal. Also the student hub, you can learn how to make other appointments with DIS staff. We've got a care team. So if you're wanting to know how to, you know, get a therapy appointment, that's a great place to learn how to do that. We've got academic support. So just know that the student hub is here to help. And so you're one-stop shop for hopefully getting the answers that you need to make the most of your time abroad.
And I also wanted to mention that if you're kind of interested in learning more about the particular locations and the experience on site, I definitely recommend looking at our student blogs from previous students. The first two are actually conversations that I had when I visited the two locations back in 2023. One with a student who was studying at DIS Stockholm in winter, and then another one with three more students pictured here in DIS Copenhagen, asking them about their experiences in the different cities. We've also had students who have done the option where they can go to both cities in the summer, who actually talked about like the two cities in comparison, if you kind of want a better idea from fellow students about their impressions of the cities. And we also have e-advisors. So these are alumni of the program, Megha being one of the student here in the middle, actually. These are students who have previously gone abroad and volunteered to be contacted by interested students who have questions for alumni about what their experience was like on the program. So now you're like, okay, I want to get started on my application. How does this actually work? So portals and deadlines. So there are two different applications that you need to fill out to join the program. So first of all, there's MCompass. So that is our, location for all of this different CGIS program applications, and you will start there. It will guide you through the MCompass or the CGIS application, and it will also provide you instructions onto going over to the DIS site to get your application completed with them too. You'll want to complete both of the applications by the deadline. DIS has actually like a rolling process, but we don't. And so we ask that you have both of these applications completed by the deadline to be able to be reviewed. We do very strongly encourage students apply by the early August 1st deadline to have the best chance possible of getting into this program. We do consider this a competitive program, but your chances of getting into the program are so much higher if you apply early. You can definitely still, if it doesn't work out for you, you can definitely still apply to the August 1st deadline. Just be mindful that it may become a little bit more competitive. Some classes may have already filled out, especially ones that are a little bit smaller capacity of how many students they can take in those cores and things like that. So definitely and think about applying early, but both of these deadlines should be doable and possible to still get into the program for sure. And this is actually a picture of the front of the DIS Copenhagen. So this is what it looks like from the outside of the hub. So the application materials themselves. So it kind of looks like a lot, but it's honestly not that much work when you get down to it. So basically on the MCompass side, probably the biggest item is just completing the undergraduate education abroad nomination form and also getting a copy of your passport and signing off on disciplinary and records releases and things like that. Do know if you're going to Sweden, we do require that your passport you have a passport in hand at the time you apply because of a more complicated Swedish visa process. But DIS helps you out through the entire process, and it's really not that hard. But then otherwise, we have additional signature and learning content items, and then it will send you over to the DIS application instructions. You'll want to open this up and go over to the DIS portal and follow what it tells you. Do know that this is like an item that will be checked off, and it will be marked off by me after I see you completed all the DIS items. On the DIS side of things, so like I mentioned with those core courses, you're going to be making those core course selections. So you can like rank, like your top 2 of them. And I think you can rank them across. So if your like top choice maybe is in Copenhagen, but your second choice is in Sweden, right?
Yep, that's totally perfect.
Awesome. There's also essays. So there are 3 essays, and students should answer these with like 1 to 2 paragraphs. Don't stress too much about the essays, just kind of convey why you're interested in this program, why you're interested in your core course, and just try to answer the prompts, but don't feel like you have to write a novel. Otherwise, you'll just want to provide them with your unofficial transcript. And then there's that home institution approval. This is the thing that's going to be left blank until after the application deadline. So once you get everything else done and it's past April or August 1st, I will go in, see you've done everything, and complete that final home institution approval requirement. Additional notes. So, and this is an example, by the way, of lovely fika. They treated us to so much fika when we were there, and these cinnamon buns are absolutely amazing. You have to try them.
I think, yeah, honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. If you study with DIS, I believe every core course has at least one designated fika break. So they will legally have to try.
Yeah. So with their course approvals, so if you're thinking about like, okay, am I gonna be able to get credit for my major, my minor? What is this gonna look like abroad? So definitely start conversations with your advisor early about study abroad. If you're thinking about going abroad this next winter, start talking to your advisor about it now when you still have a couple months out until the deadline. Your advisor can help you decide like what requirements you can complete abroad and what must be done on campus. Often those upper level electives are ones that can be really good to get done abroad for a lot of different majors, but ask your individual program how that works. And LSA students, the nice thing is that you receive in-residence credit on your transcript no matter what, and classes are taken abroad automatically apply towards your GPA, and you have the option to take classes pass fail if you don't want that class to show up in your GPA. For major minor courses, definitely consult your major and minor advisors and check for pre-approved coursework on like our by major page. Like for example, psychology and BCN, they have a whole layout of what courses are pre-approved at DIS. For distribution classes, so if you're thinking maybe you want to get your humanities or social science distributions, those are generally very easy to get done abroad. You just need to consult your general academic advisor about it. But in general, with both of these, think it through, the course options, narrow down your choices, find the syllabi, and set up an appointment with your advisors. For multiple application policy, so we do have a policy that students who can apply to a second or third application choice if their first choice is competitive. So what this will look like with DIS is considered a competitive program. So 2 important notes. You have to rank DIS as your first choice. So if you don't rank DIS as your first choice program, you won't be reviewed. And then if you do want to apply for a backup option, you can apply for a non-competitive backup. We have instructions about how do you do the ranking and Encompass and everything like that. But do note that you do have to rank, and you have to rank DIS 1, and you can absolutely apply to a non-competitive backup just to make sure that you're going to be okay and you're going abroad somewhere next winter. Financial aid. So you'll want to consult the Office of Financial Aid if you receive funding already towards your abroad experience to see if you can use your funds towards your abroad experience. Most students are going to be able to take a really decent chunk of their aid that they're using here and use it over abroad. You do have to be taking the minimum of 12 credits for the term. But that's just kind of standard anyway. And they have a variety of funding options that are available that they can use and pull from to be able to support your experience abroad. To get an idea of what your funding package might look like for you individually, you can actually fill out a study abroad estimate worksheet, and that will allow you to submit all the details about what the program would cost, and they'll send back what they think that they're going to be able to cover for you. And then with the LSA Study Abroad Scholarship, if you are an LSA student who is eligible for financial aid, you are eligible to apply to the LSA Study Abroad Scholarship. It's a really wonderful scholarship. A lot of our students who are eligible are going to get funding between $1,000 and $10,000 that will help go towards your program costs. So winter applications will open in October and close November 30th. So it will be after that deadline. So don't forget about it in the meantime. And then you can, and it's very simple application, just make sure you don't miss it because they don't allow late applications. For additional scholarships, we have a whole page of additional scholarships from LSA units and other units, and also national scholarships, and DIS has scholarships too. They are also in like the same additional scholarships link. Just look for DIS particularly, and we've all included them there as well.
Need-based, merit-based, diversity-based, so definitely check out all the scholarships you can, tack them on top of each other.
So,
Don't think financial is a barrier.
yeah. And do you know when the winter deadline is for DIS?
Yes, it's after your deadline. So it
Okay.
doesn't matter.
After ours. Awesome. So, finally, I wanted to note that we have a CGIS website and advising page. If you want to ask more in questions to us, you can do so. We have our website, mCompass, and also an advising page where you can look through resources we have available, and you can set up an appointment with me to talk more about the program.
Also got DIS website, DIS bloggers, all of the links that you will need. There is so much on our website. So if you have any questions about where to find something or just want to be in contact, feel free to reach out to me on my email. But I also posted our link to DIS advising. So you can sign up for a one-on-one 20-minute advising session with the DIS staff. That's another option to have a more one-on-one conversation. So definitely check that out and click into any of the links that you can.
Awesome. And finally, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you're very excited about potentially studying abroad with DIS next winter. Bye. Okay.